So the big question is, are generics as good as the name brand medications? Well, let's explore that a little further. First, understand that a name brand medication goes through 4 phases of clinical trial. The initial ones are fairly small groups, and as they progress through the 4th stage, there are larger and larger study groups. These are expensive, but the big pharma really does recoup that money fairly easily. That lends itself to these meds being rather expensive. The interesting thing is often there are support programs that allow a person to get a med at a much lower rate if they have insurance. There are other support programs for people who don't have insurance or who have insurance that just plain doesn't cover medications. And these all benefit big pharma as well. They are not losing money on this. And I'm not going to go into this in this particular video. I may in a future video, but believe me, the deck is stacked for big pharma to make big bucks. So a generic medication comes along when a patent runs out. Usual patent period of time is 15 years. And what gets released is the molecule and not the process for making the molecule. And we can have as much as a 40% spread in potency as compared to the name brand medication. And this is amazing that we actually allow this range of potency difference. Realize that just because a medication goes generic doesn't mean the price is going to drop immediately. One company gets exclusive rights to produce that generic for 6 months. For the next 6 months after a med goes generic, price is going to go up or it's going to stay the same. It's only after that period where market forces can come into play and drug prices drop to a greater or lesser degree. Some of the generics are still pretty expensive. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it costs a lot of money to produce these. It just means that they can exact a pretty high price for even a generic medication. It is unfortunately what the market will allow them to do. And there are no rules or regulations on where drugs are priced in this country. In fact, there are no rules or regulations on what a pharmacy can charge for the same medication. But let's circle back to generic drugs. As I said, they let the molecule off the patent, but they don't let the process on producing that come off. It's a trade secret. So the companies making generic medications, they need to figure out just how they're going to make a particular generic medication. And this leads to some broad differences. Oftentimes, I have my patients say, we changed to a different generic and I have headaches or it just doesn't work as well. And often these are a result of a potency change. Sometimes this leads to disastrous effects when you have things like mood stabilizers and a person is dialed in at a particular dosage and dosage strength, and suddenly we markedly reduce that. This has happened several times where a new generic has come along and people, essentially have lowered their effective dose and they destabilize. There is a process by which providers can report these adverse drug reactions. And God, I've made a bunch of these, and it's led to some medications being taken off the US market. So one of the things and takeaways I ask people to do is keep track of what generic you have. Sometimes I specifically order a particular generic, and your provider can do this. Your provider should do this. If you find a generic that works for you, it helps to keep taking the same thing that works. It has an element of predictability. When you change to a new essentially generic medication, it's a bit of a wild card. So this is a heads up on generic medications. Yes, they are less expensive. If your insurance company mandates that you have a name brand product, be a little suspicious, because what's behind that is they get a kickback from the pharmaceutical company. You wind up paying more. I find this pretty abusive. It surprised me when I first saw companies mandating that their clients get a name brand medication. It's not because it's better. You know, you follow the money trail and you tend to get a lot of answers. This has been G.H. Glade for Coaching ADD. I look forward to you coming to these videos. I hope they're helpful. Please give me feedback on other topics you might like to see or things I could do better to serve you. And most of all, give it a like, give it a share, and subscribe. Subscribe button, yeah, right down there. I'll see you next week when I release another video. Take care.